If you or someone you know has diabetes, you may have built up an extra supply of test strips and lancets. That's where we come in. We'll buy the supplies that you don't need and resell them to those in need to prevent waste. Help us make diabetes management more affordable. Visit us at teststripswithaz.com.
All right, joining me right now, just made her professional MMA debut in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania a few weeks back. She went into enemy territory and submitted Bridget Chase in the first round at WFC 109. Happy to be joined by another Canadian MMA prospect, Jasmine Jasudavicius. Did I get that right, Jasmine?
Yes, you did.
Do you have a hard time with that in terms of the pronunciation? Because like I just told you off air, I've watched pretty much all of your fights on YouTube, and I heard the ring announcers pronounce it in so many different ways. You know, is that a problem for you?
Yeah, I mean, everyone gets it wrong, but I just kind of roll with it. I don't really care. It's been happening my entire life, so it's no big deal.
So, doing my research, you just turned 30 years old, and, you know, you made your amateur debut less than 2 years ago, which, you know, some of the different platforms have been saying. But, you know, you had a later start to your MMA career in terms of, you know, most people that I talk to. So how did this all happen for you? What got you into the gym and then eventually into the cage?
So it's actually kind of a weird story, but so my boyfriend is Chris Prickett. He's like my coach and everything now, but we like just started dating at the time, and he was going up to do a little like camp with Jason Sago in PEI, and so he's like, "Hey, do you want to come to PEI with me?" So I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Like, haven't been there before. I'd like to see it. And then so when we went there, then like we were obviously in the gym a lot with him, and then the one day they were sparring, and I'm like, "Oh, I want to spar," and then they're like, "You've never done anything before in your life. Like, you played soccer. That's about it. Like, you can't just like go in there and spar." And then so afterwards, Jason's like, "Okay, well, like after I'll do like a little bit after with her." And then so after practice, and Jason and I just kind of like were like messing around, and he's like, "You know what, like you got some natural ability, like maybe if you start training, then like you could make a run at this." And then so I was like, "Oh, okay." And then it wasn't until we actually went to the event and like saw it, I was like, "Holy, this is awesome." So then I kind of started training a little bit more, and then I went on the Brock University wrestling team. They go on a Christmas trip every year, and so we went to Cuba that year, and it was like the same kind of thing. Chris was just like, "Hey, do you want to come to Cuba?" I was like, "Obviously." And I thought it was going to be like an all-inclusive vacation. I'm just going to have some fun. And then once we were there, it's like a training camp. Like, it is on a resort, but it's like training twice a day and everything. And so we got there, and we were having like a couple drinks at the bar, and he's just like, "Oh, okay, well, I gotta do practice at 3:00. Why don't you just jump in?" And I like jokingly said, "I'm like, give me a couple more of these and I will." And had a couple more, and then went to practice, and I was like, "Oh, like this is actually awesome." And so when I came back, that's when I started like training consistently.
That is one of the craziest stories ever. So you have like no combat sports experience until then? Like no karate, nothing?
Not really. Like, I mean, I like mess around with my friends and stuff, but like no like formal training, like nothing like that. I mean, I'd like mess or like at the gym, like if I, you know, kind of see things, but
And when was this? Like when did this all start? Because you made
this was
your
like,
debut in November of 2017. Was it that year, or was it like a year before that?
it was probably about a year before that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is quite the story. So
Yeah.
as you're progressing, I mean, obviously you have natural abilities like they said, and you're able to pick things up very quickly. So that first fight in November of 2017, what were those emotions like for you? Like, you know, what were you feeling heading into it? Because I'd say that like there's always nerves when you go out and compete in any sport. I mean, you played soccer. I'm sure you felt that. You know, it was probably more in an intensity, like let's get out there and and do this thing kind of a way, but fighting, MMA can make people feel very vulnerable. So what was that like for you, making your amateur debut after all that?
It was pretty crazy. Like, I mean, I was super nervous, obviously, like stepping into a cage, like I was like, holy shit. Um, but then like afterwards it was like such a rush, so like that's what kind of kept me like going back. And it's easier to deal with the nerves because you kind of know what to expect the more and more you do it. I mean, there's still obviously nerves every single time, but they're more manageable. Like the first one, I remember like feeling like my legs were like jelly almost. I was like, okay, we're doing it. Like I had to like sit there and like think in my head like okay, yep, this is happening, and I just had to just accept that I'm doing it and it's happening, and then I'm like, okay, well, we're doing it.
I have a friend who is an amateur fighter, and he gets those nerves all the time. Like, he tells his coaches, I don't want to fight. I don't want to do this. I want to go home. But then when he makes the walk and, you know, he gets all set up with the mouthpiece and everything, and he walks up the stairs, he takes his hands and he slaps the mat. And once that happens, he gets put into this position where he's like, all right, I'm ready to do this. Do you have a ritual? Is there something like that for you? Or do you just kind of fall into that place, mentally?
I don't really have like a ritual or anything like that. I mean, during camp, I like train like crazy hard and like do everything possible, like my diet, my like make sure get enough like cardio in, my technical abilities, everything, so that I can like on fight day, I can like sit back and say like, have I done everything possible that I could possibly do to win this fight? And if I can like sit back and confidently say that, then I feel good about going into the cage, because it's like I can let go of if I win or lose, it doesn't matter, because I put in all the work I can. So if she's better that night, then she's better, but I'm more than likely going to be better that night.
Is this your full-time job now, competing in mixed martial arts, or do you have another job on the side as well?
Pretty much it's my full time. I mean, I do like I help with the kids classes at the gym, but yeah, this is my full time. I'll like occasionally pick up a shift every once in a while at this. I work at like a youth homeless shelter. I used to do it full time, then I went down to part time, and then down to like relief staff. So every once in a while, but like very rarely I'll do that.
I was just going to ask what you were doing before you found this crazy sport of ours, but there you go. And, you know, as you're making your amateur run, some fighters make the leap from amateur to pro very quickly. Others take their time. They get their reps in. Like maybe they're finishing up school. Maybe they have a full-time job outside of MMA. There's a lot of different reasons behind the decision either way. So after 4 fights and 4 wins in 13 months at the amateur level, did you just feel like you were ready at that point to take things to the next level?
I just like relied on my coaches. Whenever they said I'm ready, then I'm ready. I put pretty much all my faith in it. They're the ones that choose my fights, like everything. Even like my manager doesn't really like talk to me about fights. He sends them to my coaches, and then they'll discuss and like say like, okay, she's ready for this date or this opponent, whatever kind of thing. So it's all in their hands. So whenever they say I'm ready for whatever it is, then I trust them.
I mean, I know you're not really privy to the fight information. Manager goes to coaches. Coaches tell you this is what you're doing. You say okay. Is there a reason why all of your fights have been in the United States and none of them have been in Canada?
Well, no, we've been trying so hard to get one in Canada. Like, I actually had one booked for in Canada, but unfortunately the girl, she couldn't get the medicals done, I think it was. So that one fell through, but there's not very many organizations in Canada. So that's like part of the issue. They tried super hard, even when my girl pulled out, to try to get me on again. But I'm hoping there's another one in Niagara coming. I'm hoping to get on that.
That fight with Bridget Chase from a few weeks back, that was a crazy fight. That thing started off really fast and furious. She just came right after you. She was throwing everything but the kitchen sink. It was like a hockey fight. Like that's what it reminded me of. But then you were able to to slow things down. You worked with her up against the fence. You wore her out a little bit. In the second round, you were able to do more of the same. You took her back, and then you choked her out, and that thing was nasty and tight. I mean, that was a nasty rear naked choke. Like, was that the game plan going in, to just be patient, weather the storm, and then just use the clinch to your advantage to start to wear her down a little bit?
Not really. I mean, I don't even really remember the game plan for there. We're on to the next one, but I think the game plan was to kind of take her down because she was very wily, but I don't think we really had like a strict game plan for that. I think it was just kind of like, go get whatever she gives you, take what she gives you. If you're feeling good standing, keep it standing. If you want to take her down, then take her down. And she kind of gave me the takedown, so that's what I did.
By the way, as a 36-year-old, the fact that you walk out to Inner Circle Sweat, props to you, because going back and watching your fights, I was like, wow, this is like a 90s throwback party going on right now. What about that song made you pick it, especially with, let's be honest, when you listen to the lyrics of that song and try to decipher it all, it's an interesting set of lyrics.
Yeah, no, that's actually exactly why I picked it. It's like, you don't really know with that song, and so that's what I kind of liked about it. And I feel like it gets you in like a good mood, and like you're feeling good and everything. So that's why I like it.
Do you have anything in the pipeline right now for getting back in there? I know you're the last to know about these things, but do you have anything coming up, or you're still waiting at this point?
No, I've got something September 7th, actually. So coming up soon in Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Cage Titans?
Yeah.
Really? I did not know that. Welcome to Massachusetts. This is great. I'm from Massachusetts. I'm in Massachusetts myself. Who are you fighting?
Awesome. Well, yeah.
Who are you fighting?
I'll be there in a couple weeks. Her name is Kylie O'Hearn, I think it is.
Oh, no kidding. That's a banger.
Hometown girl.
Wow.
Yeah. She fought at like 45 and 35 before, but I guess they say it's a good matchup for me, so sounds good.
And that's a cool venue too. That's like an old school, kind of like the theater / music hall type places where it's like balconies up the top. It's very kind of nostalgic looking. It's a really cool place to fight. And Cage Titans is a huge promotion. So if you thought you were in enemy territory going to Pittsburgh, it's gonna be very interesting. I'm sure you thrive off of that stuff at this point.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
I know you you train with Randa Markos. Jojo Calderwood's another one you've trained with. And Jojo's got a big fight coming up in a couple weeks against Andrea Lee. But to have women like that, to have that experience, I know you're surrounded by experienced people anyways with your boyfriend and Jason, you know, to be able to train with those women who have been in the UFC for a while, have picked up some big wins, have had interesting roads to get to where they're at right now, and you've had an interesting road yourself. How important is that for you to be able to learn and evolve with them in the room to take that into the cage?
No, it's like amazing. That's one of the things. It's like being like obviously a female fighter that you struggle with most is trying to find good quality girl partners. Like for MMA, it's easier to find specific like boxing or kickboxing or jiu-jitsu or something like that. But to find like a female MMA fighter that's like within driving range is very hard. I'm very fortunate because I have a couple, but yeah, it's awesome to be able to like make trips to other gyms to be able to train with like obviously such like high quality girls like you've mentioned.
What's the end game here? Because I've talked to fighters who compete to stay in shape. I talked to one fighter who did it, who got into MMA because he wanted to lose weight for his wedding, and then just took it to where he's been going with it. Some do it just to scratch that competitive itch. Others want to take this thing all the way and go to the UFC and be a world champion. Why do you fight? Where do you want this all to take you?
Ideally, I'd like to do UFC, but any like high level organization, I'll obviously be open to. But yeah, I want to get to the top of wherever I can.
One of the big talking points heading into UFC 240 last month in Edmonton, and coming out of it as well was the state of Canadian MMA, and we kind of touched on that a little bit, but people saying that the talent pool isn't as deep. Max Holloway, who's from Hawaii and is one of the best on the planet, don't get me wrong, is being positioned as the face of Canadian MMA right now. So when you hear that, when you hear people say that there's no stars in Canada, the talent pool isn't as deep, how do you react? What do you say to those people?
I kind of agree a little bit. Like, I mean, I think it's cool. Like, Max Holloway, he's a good fighter, so I don't mind that he represents Canada. And I mean, obviously, there's like GSP and stuff like that, but ideally, I'd like to be the next big name Canadian star.
I think it can happen. I think your story is just so fascinating. I think a lot of people, once they hear it, they're gonna be like, "Wow, this is just crazy that you just fell into it, essentially." Just on a whim, really. Like, so it was like, yeah, why don't you come with me? And then you went, and look at where you're at now. You're heading to Plymouth, Massachusetts on September 7th to face Kylie O'Hearn for Cage Titans. Great stuff, Jasmine. Before we let you go, let the folks know where they can find and follow along on this journey with you via social media. Any shout-outs, anything else you want to get off your chest, the floor is yours.
For sure. So my Instagram is Jasmine Jasudavicius. Probably should have a better Instagram because last name's just kind of match the letters and it'll probably come up. And yeah, shout out to obviously Dodge Sports hooking me up. He's awesome. I couldn't be more appreciative. All my sponsors, everything. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jasmine. Continued success. Looking forward to see you back in there on September 7th. I might have to make a trip out to Plymouth to watch this fight now.
That would be awesome.